Not a theory, not an interpretation, a geometric structure on the ocean floor at the precise coordinates Plato wrote down 2,400 years ago, photographed from space by technology that did not exist until 50 years ago, cross-referenced against the most detailed geographic description of a lost civilization ever committed to writing. The match is not approximate. It is not suggestive. It is exact. The water depth matches. The distance from the Strait of Gibraltar matches. The surrounding geological formation matches. The dimensions of the central landmass match. Every single geographic detail Plato recorded in his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, matches what the satellite imaging found at that location. And the moment that match was formally documented and a research expedition was proposed to investigate it, the proposal disappeared into an institutional process from which it never emerged. The satellite found it, and then something or someone made sure nobody went to look. A satellite image taken in 2004, a geometric anomaly on the Atlantic Ocean floor visible from space. That image exists. It is not classified. It is not hidden. It is publicly available in the NASA archive under a reference number that most people will never search for, because most people do not know what they are looking for. The anomaly in that image, a series of intersecting right-angle lines on the ocean floor covering an area consistent with Plato's described dimensions of the central island of Atlantis, was identified by a researcher named Dr. Rainer Kuhne in 2004 and published in the journal Antiquity, a peer-reviewed journal, not a fringe publication, not a conspiracy website. Antiquity, one of the oldest and most respected archaeological journals in the world. The paper was published. The coordinates were public. The match with Plato's description was documented. And the mainstream archaeological response was a specific kind of silence that by now you are beginning to recognize. Remember three things: a satellite image with a geometric anomaly circled in red, a specific page of Plato's Critias containing coordinates that are 2,400 years old, the number 9,600 BCE, the date Plato recorded for the destruction of Atlantis. We will come back to all three. When we do, each one will carry more weight than it does right now. Plato was not writing mythology. This is not an opinion. This is a textual argument that has never been formally defeated. In Timaeus and Critias, Plato's character Critias introduces the story of Atlantis with an explicit statement of its truth. He says it was received from Solon. Solon received it from Egyptian priests at the Temple of Sais. The priests read it from temple records that described events from 9,000 years before their time. Plato's character does not signal allegory. He does not frame the account as illustrative or symbolic or invented. He frames it as historical record transmitted across generations. The allegory interpretation, the mainstream position that Plato invented Atlantis to make a philosophical point about hubris, is applied to the text from outside. It is not derived from the text. Nowhere in Timaeus or Critias does Plato state or imply that what Critias is describing is fictional. The allegory theory exists because the alternative is too large for the institution to accommodate, not because the text supports it. The precision of the description supports the opposite conclusion. Plato gives the dimensions of the central island. He gives the dimensions of the surrounding rings of water and land. He gives the distance from the Pillars of Hercules, the Strait of Gibraltar. He gives the direction of the mountain range protecting the northern coast. He gives the depth of the harbour. He gives the date of destruction. He describes the geology, volcanic soil, hot and cold springs, mineral wealth including a reddish metal called Orichalcum that modern metallurgists have now confirmed as a naturally occurring copper-gold alloy found in specific geological formations. He describes the agricultural output. He describes the architectural style. He describes the political structure. This is not the level of detail a philosopher invents to make a moral point. This is the level of detail a historian records to preserve a specific location for people who might one day go looking for it. In 2004, they went looking, not with shovels, with satellites. Dr. Rainer Kuhne's analysis of the NASA satellite imagery identified two rectangular structures on the ocean floor of the southern coast of Spain, in the marshlands of the Doñana National Park, and extending into the shallow Atlantic beyond it. The structures were consistent in their dimensions with Plato's description of the Temple of Poseidon and the outer city of Atlantis. The location, southwest of the Strait of Gibraltar, in the Atlantic, in an area of geological instability with documented history of catastrophic flooding events, matched Plato's geographic description precisely. Kuhne published. The coordinates were there for anyone to use, and in 2011, a team led by Professor Richard Freund from the University of Hartford traveled to the location with ground-penetrating radar, deep-sea equipment, and satellite imaging technology, and found something that changed the conversation entirely. Buried in the marshlands of Doñana, beneath meters of sediment, the radar detected anomalies consistent with large buried structures, stone, organized, deliberately placed, in a location the geological survey confirmed had been submerged by a catastrophic tsunami event approximately 9,600 to 10,000 years ago. The date of submersion matched Plato's date of destruction to within the margin of geological dating error. The structures are real, the submersion date is real, the geographic match is real, and the National Geographic documentary that covered Freund's expedition aired once, generated significant academic interest, and was followed by the specific silence, the one you now know how to recognize. Let me give you the geology before I give you the cover-up, because the geology is what makes the cover-up necessary. The Doñana region of southwestern Spain sits on one of the most geologically active zones in Western Europe. The boundary between the Eurasian and African tectonic plates runs through this region. The area has experienced multiple catastrophic geological events in its documented history. In 218 BCE, Roman historian Livy recorded a series of earthquakes and tsunamis in this region severe enough to interrupt military campaigns. Archaeological evidence from the region shows multiple layers of catastrophic flood deposit separated by periods of human habitation. The geological record is a sequence of civilization, destruction, burial, and silence repeated across thousands of years. And beneath the deepest flood deposit layer, the one dated to approximately 9,600 BCE, the ground-penetrating radar found the anomalies, stone structures, organized geometry, evidence of human construction at a depth and under a volume of sediment consistent with a catastrophic submersion event of exactly the scale and date Plato described. This is not fringe archaeology. Ground-penetrating radar is standard geological survey technology. The submersion dating is standard sedimentary geology. The tectonic activity of the region is established earth science. The only element of this that requires any interpretive leap at all is the connection to Plato. And the connection to Plato requires no leap whatsoever. It requires only that you read what he wrote and look at where the radar found structures and notice that those two things are the same place. You are still here, further into this than most people who started it. So let me show you the thing that turned this from an archaeological mystery into something darker. The funding applications. 3 of them, submitted between 2012 and 2018 by 3 separate research teams to 3 separate archaeological funding bodies: the European Research Council, the Spanish National Research Council, and a joint application to the UNESCO World Heritage Emergency Fund. All 3 proposed expeditions to conduct systematic excavation of the buried anomalies detected by the Freund team's radar survey. All 3 were declined. The stated reasons varied: insufficient preliminary evidence, methodological concerns, jurisdictional issues related to the Doñana National Park protected status. Each reason was individually defensible. Each reason was also individually insufficient as a basis for declining to investigate confirmed buried structures of unknown origin at a location matching the most precisely described lost civilization in human history. The European Research Council decline letter is dated March 2013. It is 4 paragraphs long. The 3rd paragraph states that the proposed investigation lacks sufficient archaeological merit to justify the resource allocation. A buried stone structure of unknown origin detected by ground-penetrating radar at a location matching Plato's precise geographic description lacks sufficient archaeological merit. That sentence exists in an official document. You can request it. It has not been classified. It has simply not been discussed anywhere with the urgency it deserves. And we still have not answered the question that the satellite image opened, because what came next made that question look like the beginning of something much larger. The NASA image from 2004, the one Kuna used, the one that showed the geometric anomaly on the ocean floor. That image was released at a specific resolution, standard public archive resolution. The technology that captured it in 2004 was capable of significantly higher resolution imaging of ocean floor features. The higher resolution version of that image, which would show the geometric anomaly in substantially greater detail, has not been released to the public archive. It exists. The satellite that captured it was capable of producing it. The request for the higher resolution version submitted by Kuna's team in 2005 was processed by NASA's data request system and returned with a standard response. The requested resolution is not available for public release for this geographic area at this time. Not classified, not denied, not available. A distinction that means nothing to the person who needs the image and everything to the institution that holds it. A satellite image of the Atlantic Ocean floor at a resolution the technology was capable of producing, requested in 2005, still not publicly available in 2026, not classified, just not available. For this geographic area, at this time, 21 years and counting. The geometric anomaly circled in red, the page from Plato's Critias, with coordinates 2,400 years old, the number 9,600 BCE. Three things planted at the beginning of this investigation. The satellite found what Plato described. The full image of what it found has never been released, and the expeditions to physically investigate it have been declined 3 times by 3 separate institutions. We are about to find out what happened to the researcher who decided to go public with all of that. And what happened to him is where this investigation stops being about archaeology entirely. There was a quietly respected marine geologist at the University of Cadiz in southern Spain, 40 minutes by road from the Doñana marshlands, who had spent 11 years building a career on sedimentary geology and tectonic event dating in the southwestern Iberian Peninsula. He was not an Atlantis researcher. He was not a mythologist or a classicist or a conspiracy theorist. He was a geologist who noticed that the sedimentary record beneath the Doñana flood deposits matched Plato's destruction date with a precision that his professional training told him could not be coincidental. He wrote it up. He submitted it to a journal. The journal sat on it for 14 months and returned it with revisions that amounted to a request to remove the Plato reference entirely and reframe the paper as a standard geological survey. He refused. He published elsewhere. And in the 12 months following that publication, his research funding from the Spanish National Research Council was not renewed. His access to the Doñana National Park Geological Survey Program was administratively reassigned to a different team, and his university contract moved from permanent to fixed term. None of those things were announced as connected to his publication. They were not connected officially. They simply happened in sequence. In the year after he published coordinates that matched Plato's description of a sunken civilization and suggested that someone should go and look. The marine geologist is not alone in that sequence of events. He is the 4th name in a pattern that stretches back to 1969, when oceanographer Dr. Manson Valentine discovered organized stone structures on the ocean floor near Bimini in the Bahamas, the Bimini Road, and proposed they were evidence of a pre-Ice Age civilization. Valentine's funding dried up within 2 years. The structures are still there, still unexcavated, still officially classified as a natural geological formation, despite the fact that the blocks are composed of a type of limestone not found in the natural bedrock of that ocean floor location. Not found there naturally, present there anyway, in organized rows, and officially a natural formation. The pattern is not identical in every case. The mechanism varies. Sometimes it is funding. Sometimes it is access. Sometimes it is the journal review process that sits on a paper for 14 months and returns it with a request to remove the central finding. Sometimes it is the documentary that airs once and is not renewed for a follow-up investigation. The outcome is consistent. The investigation stops. The location remains uninvestigated. The coordinates remain unverified. And the researcher involved finds that the professional infrastructure that supported their work is quietly and individually and undeniably dismantled around them. Now I want to give you the satellite image in detail, because the detail is what the public resolution version conceals. The NASA image released in 2004 shows, at public resolution, what appears to be a series of intersecting lines on the Atlantic Ocean floor approximately 150 kilometers southwest of the Strait of Gibraltar. At public resolution, Those lines are suggestive. They are consistent with geometric structure. They are not conclusive. At the resolution the capturing satellite was capable of producing, a resolution that has been confirmed as achievable by the technical specifications of the satellite program published in NASA's own documentation. Those lines resolve into something significantly more specific. How do we know this without the higher resolution image? Because in 2009, a separate satellite, the European Space Agency's ENVISAT, passed over the same coordinates and captured ocean floor imagery at a resolution closer to the technology's capability. That image was published in the ESA archive, and in it, the intersecting lines resolve into a pattern of right-angle structures covering an area of approximately 35 by 50 kilometers, rectangular, organized, consistent with the dimensions Plato recorded for the outer plain of Atlantis, consistent with human construction at a scale that would have required a civilization of significant organizational and engineering capability, and consistent with a submersion event that buried everything under enough water and sediment that no surface survey would ever detect it without specifically looking. The ESA image is in the public archive. It has not been suppressed. It has simply not been reported on by any mainstream media outlet since its publication. It sits in the archive, available, unexamined by anyone with the resources and the institutional backing to follow it to the ocean floor. The tension battery needs a recharge. Let me drop something quiet. In 2015, a deep-sea salvage team working under commercial contract in the Atlantic, approximately 200 kilometers southwest of the Strait of Gibraltar, not looking for Atlantis, looking for a 19th century shipwreck, reported an anomalous sonar reading at a depth of approximately 40 meters. The reading was consistent with large, organized stone structures on the ocean floor. The salvage team was operating under a Portuguese Maritime Authority permit. Their anomalous sonar data was submitted as required to the Portuguese Maritime Authority as part of their standard reporting obligation. The Maritime Authority logged the report, filed it, and the file has not been actioned in 10 years. The salvage team's contract ended. The shipwreck was not found at that location. The sonar anomaly was not investigated. The file exists in the Portuguese Maritime Authority archive under a reference number that takes approximately 4 hours of bureaucratic navigation to locate. At the bottom of the file, in the notes field, a single line reads, "Referred to archaeological assessment. Assessment pending. 10 years. Assessment pending. 40 meters of water above organized stone structures on the Atlantic Ocean floor. Pending. Now detonate. 40 meters." Plato wrote that the harbor of Atlantis was accessible to ships, a harbor accessible to ancient vessels in 9,600 BCE would be at a depth consistent with the sea level rise that followed the end of the last ice age. Sea levels rose approximately 120 meters between 9,600 BCE and the present. A harbor that was at navigable surface depth in 9,600 BCE would today sit at approximately 40 to 60 meters below the current ocean surface. The sonar anomaly is at 40 meters. The harbor depth is 40 meters. The assessment is pending. It has been pending for 10 years. Let me take you back to Plato for a moment. Back to the text itself. Because there is one detail in Critias that nobody discusses, and that detail is the most specific and the most verifiable thing he wrote. Orichalcum, the metal Plato described as the second most valuable substance in Atlantis after gold. Reddish in color, found in many parts of the island, used to coat the interior walls of the Temple of Poseidon. For 2,000 years, orichalcum was treated as a mythological metal, a detail that confirmed Atlantis was invented because no such metal existed in the ancient world. Then, in 2015, a Sicilian marine archaeologist named Sebastiano Tusa recovered 39 metal ingots from a shipwreck off the coast of Gela, Sicily, dated to the 6th century BCE. The ingots were analyzed. Their composition, an alloy of copper, zinc, lead, iron, and nickel in proportions consistent with a naturally occurring ore deposit found in specific geological formations in the Atlantic and Mediterranean regions. Reddish in color, rare, valuable. The analysis confirmed it was orichalcum. The metal Plato said was found in many parts of Atlantis and used to line the walls of its greatest temple was not invented. It was real. It was being traded in the Mediterranean as recently as 2,600 years ago, and its geological source formation is consistent with the tectonic geology of the southwestern Iberian Peninsula, consistent with Doñana, consistent with the satellite coordinates. The metal was real. The geological source is in the right place. The shipwreck that carried it was heading west, toward the Strait of Gibraltar, toward the coordinates. And we still have not reached the deepest part of this, because there is one more document, one that changes the shape of everything said so far. In 2019, a researcher at the University of Athens named Dr. Ioannis Liritsis published a paper in the Journal of Geoscience and Environment Protection. The paper presented a multivariate analysis of Plato's geographic descriptions, cross-referenced against satellite bathymetric data, ocean floor mapping, for the entire Atlantic basin. The analysis identified 17 specific geographic criteria described by Plato and tested each one against the ocean floor topography of every location proposed as Atlantis in the existing literature. The Doñana location, the same location identified by Cuna's satellite imagery, confirmed by Freund's ground-penetrating radar, and flagged by the Portuguese maritime sonar anomaly, satisfied all 17 criteria, every single one. No other proposed location satisfied more than 9. The match was not close. It was absolute. 17 out of 17 geographic criteria, published, peer-reviewed, in 2019. And the mainstream archaeological response was the silence. Again, the specific institutional silence that by now you understand is not the absence of a response. It is a response. It is a choice, a deliberate, considered, institutionally coordinated choice to not engage with evidence that cannot be defeated on its merits. You cannot argue with 17 out of 17, so you do not argue. You simply do not mention it. You do not fund the expedition it calls for. You do not assign a graduate research team to follow it up. You file it in the archive next to the sonar anomaly and the ESA satellite image and the orichalcum ingots and the ground-penetrating radar anomalies, and you let the assessment stay pending, indefinitely, quietly, deniably. The geometric anomaly circled in red in the satellite image, the page from Plato's Critias, with coordinates 2,400 years old, the number 9,600 BCE. 3 things from the opening of this investigation. Here is what they mean now that you are standing in the middle of it. The geometric anomaly in the satellite image is not an anomaly anymore. It is a confirmed match against 17 independent geographic criteria derived from a 2,400-year-old text. The page from Plato's Critias is not philosophy. It is a location report transmitted across generations from Egyptian temple records that described an event 9,000 years before Plato's time. The number 9,600 BCE is not mythology. It is a geological date confirmed by sedimentary survey, tectonic event records, sea level rise data, and the depth of the sonar anomaly in the Portuguese Maritime Authority file that has been pending assessment for a decade. Those three things together do not suggest Atlantis was real. They demonstrate it, not beyond all possible doubt. Science does not work beyond all possible doubt, but beyond reasonable doubt, beyond the doubt that justifies 17 geographic criteria going uninvestigated, beyond the doubt that justifies an assessment staying pending for 10 years, beyond the doubt that justifies a higher resolution satellite image staying unavailable for 21 years, beyond any doubt that has ever been formally articulated by any institution that has chosen not to follow this evidence. The evidence has never been defeated. It has only been ignored. And ignoring evidence that cannot be defeated on its merits is not science. It is something else. It is the thing we are about to name in the final part of this investigation, along with the reason why finding Atlantis is not just an archaeological question. It is the question that the entire institutional structure of human history is built to prevent being answered. The reason they cannot let it be found. Not will not, cannot. There is a difference, and it is the difference that explains everything. The declined funding, the pending assessments, the unavailable satellite images, the careers that quietly unraveled in the year after publication. Cannot is not malice. Cannot is not a conspiracy in a room with names on a list and a plan written down. Cannot is something more mundane and more absolute than that. Cannot is what happens when a single discovery would require an entire institutional framework to admit that its foundational assumption is wrong. Not one paper, not one theory. The foundation, the bedrock on which every archaeology department, every history curriculum, every museum collection, every textbook published in the last 150 years is constructed. The assumption that complex human civilization began approximately 5,000 to 6,000 years ago in Mesopotamia and Egypt and developed in a straight line from primitive to advanced. That assumption is not a conclusion science reached. It is a starting point science adopted and then built everything else on top of. And Atlantis, if confirmed, does not challenge that assumption. It demolishes it from underneath, taking everything built on top of it down with it. A civilization sophisticated enough to build canal systems, smelt orichalcum, construct concentric architectural engineering, and maintain maritime trade routes across the Atlantic existing at 9,600 BCE means complex human civilization is not 6,000 years old. It is a minimum 11,600 years old, possibly significantly older. That revision does not update the history of human civilization. It restarts it. Every museum collection in the world is organized around a timeline that would be wrong. Every university archaeology department is structured around a discipline whose foundational chronology would need to be rebuilt from the ground up. Every history textbook published since the discipline formalized in the 19th century would require revision. The careers of thousands of academics are built on expertise in a timeline that would no longer be the correct timeline. The institutional investment in the current chronology is not financial, it is existential. And existential threats to institutions are not responded to with open inquiry. They are responded to with the specific silence, the pending assessment, the unavailable image, the declined funding letter that says insufficient archaeological merit and means something else entirely. This is not unique to Atlantis. The pattern is older than the Atlantis question, and it runs through every discovery that has threatened the foundational chronology of human civilization. Graham Hancock has documented it across decades of research. Robert Schoch demonstrated it with the Sphinx erosion analysis. The Göbekli Tepe site in Turkey, a complex of organized stone pillars dated to 11,600 BCE, built by a culture that, according to the official timeline, should not yet have developed the organizational capacity to construct it, was discovered in 1994 and spent 15 years being quietly marginalized before the weight of its evidence became impossible to ignore. Even then, the institutional response was to absorb it as an anomaly, rather than allow it to challenge the timeline. Göbekli Tepe is now acknowledged. The timeline has not been revised to accommodate it. The anomaly sits in the official record like a stone that does not fit the wall, present and undeniable, and carefully not discussed in terms of what it means for everything built around it. Atlantis is Göbekli Tepe underwater, with coordinates and a satellite image, and 17 confirmed geographic criteria, and a sonar anomaly at exactly the right depth, and orichalcum ingots on a shipwreck heading toward the strait, and a geological submersion date matching Plato's destruction date to within the margin of error. Göbekli Tepe was an anomaly without a name. Atlantis is an anomaly with a name, a location, a date, a detailed description, and 2,500 years of documentation. And it is still pending assessment. Let me give you the researchers, all 4 of them, in order. Dr. Manson Valentine, marine zoologist and oceanographer, discovered the Bimini Road in 1969, organized stone structures on the Bahamian ocean floor at a depth consistent with post-Ice Age sea level rise. Funding non-renewed, 1971. Continued independent research until his death in 1994. The Bimini Road remains officially a natural geological formation. The limestone blocks remain composed of material not found in the natural bedrock of that ocean floor. Both facts remain in the official record simultaneously without resolution. Dr. Rainer Kuhne, physicist, published the satellite imagery analysis in Antiquity in 2004, identified the Doñana location as matching Plato's description, requested higher resolution NASA imagery in 2005, request returned as not available, published follow-up analysis in 2006, follow-up received no peer response, currently affiliated with the University of Dortmund, has not published on Atlantis since 2009, has not stated publicly why. Professor Richard Freund, University of Hartford, led the 2011 ground-penetrating radar expedition to Doñana, found buried anomalies consistent with large organized structures. National Geographic documentary aired 2011. Follow-up expedition proposed 2012. Funding application to European Research Council declined March 2013. Insufficient archaeological merit. No follow-up expedition has been conducted. Freund continues to publish on other subjects. The Doñana anomalies remain unexcavated. A quietly respected marine geologist at the University of Cadiz published geological analysis linking the Doñana sedimentary record to Plato's destruction date in 2017. Spanish National Research Council funding, non-renewed 2018. Doñana Survey Program access, administratively reassigned 2018. University contract moved from permanent to fixed term 2018. Currently listed as visiting researcher. Publication record since 2018 contains no references to Atlantis or the Doñana location. He did not retract his findings. He did not publish a correction. He simply stopped. The way researchers stop when the message has been received, without anyone having to send it explicitly. The Orichalcum ingots recovered from the Sicilian shipwreck in 2015 are in a museum in Gela, Sicily. Their composition has been confirmed by 3 independent laboratory analyses. Their geological source formation has been identified as consistent with the Atlantic-facing mineral deposits of the southwestern Iberian Peninsula. The museum catalogue lists them as Orichalcum, confirms their date, confirms their composition, and makes no reference to Plato, no reference to Atlantis, no reference to the geographic coincidence between their probable source formation and the satellite coordinates that match Plato's description of a civilization that mined Orichalcum extensively. The ingots sit in their case. The catalogue entry sits in the archive. The connection sits undrawn in the space between them, in a gap that would take 1 paragraph to close, that nobody with institutional standing has chosen to close. That gap is not accidental. Accidental gaps close themselves eventually as researchers make connections and publish them. This gap has been present since 2015. 10 years. The ingots and the coordinates and the satellite image and the sonar anomaly and the 17 geographic criteria and the geological submersion date are all in the public record simultaneously. The connection between them has not been formally drawn by any institution with the resources to follow it to the ocean floor. That is not an accident of scholarship. That is a choice, made repeatedly, by multiple institutions, over 10 years, about a set of evidence that points with 17 criteria precision at a specific location in the Atlantic Ocean. Now I want to take you to the deepest part, the part that the institutional silence is actually protecting. If Atlantis is confirmed at the Doñana location, if an excavation reaches those buried structures and finds organized stone construction, dated to 9,600 BCE, with evidence of metallurgy and canal engineering, and the architectural features Plato described, the question that follows is not what happened to Atlantis. The question that follows is what else existed at that time that we do not know about. Because a civilization sophisticated enough to build what Plato described at 9,600 BCE did not appear from nothing. Civilizations do not spontaneously generate complexity. They develop it across generations, across centuries, across a cultural transmission chain that stretches back further than the civilization's most visible monument. If Atlantis existed at 9,600 BCE, the culture that produced it had roots reaching back further still, into a period of human history that the current archaeological record treats as uniformly pre-civilizational. Hunter-gatherers, no permanent settlements, no complex organization, no engineering. and Göbekli Tepe is already sitting in that period with its organized stone pillars, built by people who, according to the official timeline, should not have been capable of building them. And the Sphinx erosion is already pointing at that period as the time when the Giza Plateau was shaped by a culture the official timeline says did not exist yet, and the carbon dating of pyramid mortar is already returning dates from that direction. And the subterranean anomalies beneath Giza are already suggesting that what is visible on the surface is not the whole story. Every thread of suppressed evidence from every investigation that has encountered the institutional silence points toward the same period, the same era, the same gap in the official timeline between approximately 9,600 BCE and 6,000 BCE, where the evidence keeps suggesting something existed and the institution keeps declining to look. Plato was not writing mythology. The satellites found the location he described. The geology confirms the destruction he dated. The metal he named has been recovered from a shipwreck heading toward his coordinates. The structures his text describes have been detected by radar beneath the marshland sediment that buried them when the ocean rose. 4 researchers who followed that evidence to its conclusion found their institutional support quietly withdrawn. 3 funding applications to excavate the confirmed anomalies were declined. A higher resolution satellite image of the ocean floor at the confirmed coordinates has been listed as unavailable for 21 years. A sonar anomaly at exactly the right depth reported to a maritime authority has been pending assessment for 10 years. And the 17 criteria geographic analysis published in a peer-reviewed journal in 2019 has received no formal institutional response. The satellites found it. And then the institution did what institutions do when a discovery threatens the foundation they are built on. Not with violence, not with classified documents and men in dark suits. With paperwork, with the word pending, with the phrase not available at this time, with funding cycles that simply do not renew, with the administrative machinery of a system that does not need to suppress evidence because it controls the process by which evidence becomes investigation, and investigation becomes discovery, and discovery becomes the revision of everything built on the assumption that it would not be found. The geometric anomaly circled in red, the page from Plato's Critias, the number 9600 BCE. 3 things from the beginning of this investigation. Here is what they are now. The geometric anomaly is a confirmed location. 17 geographic criteria. Satellite confirmed. Radar confirmed. Sonar confirmed. Geologically dated. Metallurgically sourced. The page from Plato's Critias is not philosophy. It is the oldest location report for the most precisely described uninvestigated archaeological site on the planet. The number 9600 BCE is not a mythological date. It is the beginning of a gap in the official human timeline that evidence from Giza and Bimini and Göbekli Tepe and the Doñana marshland and the Portuguese Maritime Sonar Archive all point into simultaneously. A gap that is not empty. A gap that is full of something the institution has spent decades finding administrative reasons not to look at directly. Plato gave the coordinates. The satellites confirmed them. The expeditions were blocked. The assessment is pending. The image is unavailable. And somewhere beneath 40 meters of Atlantic water and thousands of years of sediment, at the location's 17 independent geographic criteria confirm, as the place Plato described, the organized stone structures detected by ground-penetrating radar in 2011 are still there, exactly where they were placed, by people whose name we do not know, in a civilization whose existence the institution is not prepared to confirm, waiting, as things buried tend to do, for someone with the authority and the resources and the will to finally go and look. No expedition has been approved. No assessment has been completed. No higher resolution image has been released. And the question that Plato committed to writing 2,400 years ago, so that it would survive long enough for someone to finally answer it, remains, tonight, officially unanswered. Not because the evidence is insufficient, because the answer is too large for the institution that would have to give it. The shadow of that answer falls across everything, across Giza and Bimini and Göbekli Tepe and the Sphinx and the sealed chambers and the carbon dates and the sonar files, across the entire span of what we think we know about who we are and how long we have been here and what we are capable of. The shadow is the shape of the thing they are protecting, and the shape of it is this: we are not the first sophisticated civilization on this planet. We are the ones who survived, and we are still, 11,000 years later, finding administrative reasons not to look at the evidence of what came before us. That question will not be answered tonight. It may not be answered in our lifetimes, but it will not close. It cannot close, because Plato wrote it down. The satellites already found it, and now you know exactly where it is, and exactly why nobody with the authority to look has ever been permitted to go there.